Before we dive into branches, let's have a quick look back at the slide we already saw, because we learned that a branch basically is a unique set of specific code changes. Now, it sounds a bit strange, but if you think back about our current state in a project, we have our working directory with our commits, and these commits are in this current master branch. So this branch holds all these commits. The master branch is, by the way, the default name for the first branch you create in Git projects. Now, as mentioned in the theoretical example earlier, if you want to start a side project or add additional content to your current project, you might want to create a complete copy of that existing branch, work on that copy, and then later implement the changes you added to this copy to the original, to the master branch. So the goal now is to create such a copy of the master branch. In this case, we called it landing page branch, and then we want to add some additional folders maybe or files and additional commits. Later, we'll then have a look at how we can add these changes to the master branch. So keep that in mind. We have currently our master branch, which we'll now copy and then continue working on our project. Back in our project, let's first have a look at our current branch, this master branch we are working on. Generally, you can get an overview of all the branches you have in your current project with the git branch command. If you run this, you see we only have this single master branch at the moment, indicated by this green highlighting and by the asterisk right here. Now, as I said, this is the default branch that is created with our first commit. We can also create additional branches here. For example, here we could say we have these two text files in our initial master branch. Now we want to add a third text file, in this case in a separate branch. As mentioned, this could be such a new feature you want to implement. To create a new branch, we can again use the git branch command, but now we have to add the name of this new branch that we want to create. In contrast to the commit messages, we don't need to use quotation marks here, but the branch name must not contain any spaces. Therefore, we could call this simply second branch with a dash. Of course, these are not typical names you would use in your real-world project. Here it's just for demonstration purposes to understand the general logic behind Git. With that, we see nothing, of course, and nothing changed here. But if we now again run git branch in here, you see we now created this second branch down here. Currently, as mentioned before, we are still in our master branch. To access this second branch, we do what now? Well, we use our checkout command we already learned. We can use this for commits also, but actually checkout is made to switch between different branches. We have different branches now, therefore we can just run git checkout and here refer to our second branch like this. Now you get the confirmation that we switched to the second branch, and if we clear this quickly, we can now see that this second branch is exactly equal to our master branch. If we run git log, we can confirm this. So you see we have our second text file added and the first one. So it's exactly the same structure that we had in our master branch. And very important, a bit later, we also have the same IDs for both commits in the master and in this new branch we created. This will also become important when we talk about this head thing right here. Let's ignore this for the moment though. With Q, we can leave the log right here. And now before we work on this second branch, I would like to show you an alternative way how to create branches. Because instead of using git branch and the branch name and then checking it out, you can also find a kind of shortcut for this type of operation. And the shortcut is simply git checkout like this, and now -b, so this basically creates a new branch and checks it out immediately. And what we need, of course, also here is a branch name. Here I will call it third branch, as I said, not the typical naming convention in a real-world project. If we do this, we see we switched to a new branch named third branch, and we also created this new branch. With git branch once again, we can confirm this. We now have 3 branches in our project, and we are currently working in this third branch here. Now, being in this third branch, we can also add changes to this branch. I will again create a new file right here to make it easier to understand what is happening. So let's create this new file, and let's call it working with branches.txt. Right here, and here we could add some messages if we want to. Now we know how branches work. We can save this. And now, as we have a change made, we can of course add this change to our staging area. We say git add working with branches dot text. Now it's added, and now we can commit this with our git commit command, -m for the message, and now added branches text file, for example. If we do that, no big surprise, we can run git log in our newly created branch, and we see we have this added branches text file, and we also have our first 2 commits. So that's the same thing we had in the second branch we created. If we create a new branch based on another branch, then all commits will be taken into this new branch. Another side note, you see the head changed here, so definitely something we should dive deeper into in the next lectures. However, we can now quit this here, and as you see, we have these 3 files in here now in this third branch. If we now go back to our master branch, for example, with git checkout master, like this, you see that the files are gone, and this is deleted, so it's no longer available here in my IDE. And with git log, oops, not in here, and with git log, we can again see that in here, we only have these 2 files. So the added commit in the third branch is not reflected in here, as we work in separate branches, separate copies of our project, so to say. Now that's interesting, but what if this addition that we had in our third branch, so this new text file, is something that we also want to have in here in our master branch? As said already, this could be an additional feature implemented to our website, which is now finished and which should now be added to the master branch, so to our website in the end. Well, this is a feature called merging. We'll dive into this in the next lecture. How can we merge different branches? I mentioned it already. The idea behind merging is that if you work on a separate feature in a separate branch and you finish this feature, you can then kind of combine both branches, in our case the master branch and our third branch, and with that add such a feature to your master branch, which is typically the branch containing your project, for example, the website. Now let's first quit our log here and clean the screen or clear the terminal. And the git merge command works pretty straightforward actually. You simply run git and now merge, but now very important, you are located in the branch where the additional information from the other branch should be added to. Now, as I said, we want to add our third commit to our master branch. Therefore, at the moment, just to show you this once again, I'm here in the master branch. So now we can simply say that we want to merge the content from our other branch into this master branch, and we do this via the git merge command and now referring to the third branch in here. If we do that, you see, we now have suddenly 3 files here in our master branch. And again, to show you this, we are still in the master branch. If I log this quickly, you see that we now have our added branches text file commit here and also the other 2 commits. So now we have 3 commits here in this master branch, and we added the data, the content from our third branch into this one. However, we still have an issue here. We have this head thing I was talking about in the last lecture quickly. We have right here something with head. Here we have that green highlighting with second branch. So what about this right here? Now, let's explore this in the next lecture. What is this head that we saw for our different commits in our log? Well, to understand the head, we have to think about the typical structure that we have. We have our master branch, and in this branch we have 1, 2, 3 commits, for example. Now, whenever we use the checkout command the way it's intended to be, you know that we can also check out individual commits, but if we use it in its typical use case, which would be checking out branches, then if we check out the master branch, this last commit right here will be the so-called head. Why is this the head? Because by checking out the branch, we are referring to a specific branch which indirectly points to the latest commit in this branch. That's a default behavior that we have in Git. So checking out the branch means we are referring to a specific branch, and in this branch we basically indirectly refer to the latest commit because that's how Git behaves in the end. We always see this latest commit in here, and that's the head. Now, if you think about our other branch, I call it other here we also could have 3 commits, and then we could add a 4th commit, for example, so we have an additional one, and then if we switch to our master branch, where the 3rd commit is the head, and then we check out our other branch again, well, then this will be our head, right? Because as I said, with checking out branches, we are referring to a specific branch, and therefore we indirectly refer to the specific commit in this branch. This is always the last commit, and that's the so-called head. So far, so good. Let's go back to the project and see where we can find this. And for this, I'll quickly quit this here. And I'll list my branches with git branch. And I would like to check out the second branch first. You'll see in a few seconds why I do this. So we check out our second branch. So we refer to this specific branch. And now we run git log once again. And what we've seen here is we have our 2 commits, and here in our latest commit, we have this head, which refers to the second branch. That's what I said. If we check out a specific branch, this branch holds different commits, and the latest commit of a specific branch is then the so-called head. So far, so nice. Let's exit this, and now let's switch to our master branch right here, and let's log this. In here we have a different, information level now you could say. We have our second branch down there, so this tells us that if we would check out the second branch, this commit would be the head in the end. But as we are not in the second branch here, we have the head now for this latest commit. This commit is the latest commit in both the master and the 3rd branch here, therefore the head changed now. So this is how this head thing looks like in theory and practice. Let's quit this now. And let's now dive a bit deeper into the theory now, because besides the head, we also have the so-called detached head.